bite marks operates on a visceral level that's almost embarrassingly honest for political discourse. While most political metaphors try to dress themselves in silk, this one comes to us naked and snarling. In Noxus's context, it's not just about the wound, it's about the signature left behind, like a critic signing their review with their teeth. What's particularly delicious about this metaphor is its inherent temporality. A bite mark tells you three stories simultaneously. The immediate past, the act of biting. The present, the wound. The future, the inevitable scar. Just as in Noxus's political theater, where every action leaves its trace in the flesh of history. Consider how a bite mark differs from other wounds. A sword cut might be cleaner, a bullet hole more efficient, but a bite mark? That's personal. It requires the aggressor to get close, to be intimate with their violence. In Noxus's case, it's about power that's not just exercised but tasted. Every bite mark is unique, a dental record of dominance. In Noxus's political landscape, these marks serve as a kind of primitive documentation. Who bit whom, how deep, and with what kind of teeth. The Black Rose masquerade isn't just hiding faces, it's concealing dental records. The most intriguing aspect is how bite marks heal. They may fade, but they rarely disappear completely. Like Mel Medarda's return to her roots, they become part of the body's autobiography, chapters written in scar tissue. In trying to leave their mark on history, the powerful often end up revealing more about their own nature than their victim's weakness. Every bite mark is a confession as much as it is a wound. In Noxus, these bite marks serve as both warning and invitation, a reminder that power leaves its signature on everything it touches, and that sometimes the most honest political discourse comes with teeth. How we've sanitized political violence into metaphors, only to have those metaphors bare their teeth at us again. In Noxus's Black Rose masquerade, we find the perfect crystallization of political reality, a place where people wear masks to show their true faces. Isn't it deliciously ironic that the most honest political interactions happen when everyone openly admits they're lying? Consider the dance between Katarina and Elise, assassin and spider, both wearing masks while attempting to unmask each other. The real masquerade isn't in hiding one's intentions, but in making the hiding itself so obvious that it becomes a form of communication. What makes a masquerade so politically perfect is its inverse relationship with truth. The more elaborate the disguise, the more it reveals. When Noxian power players don their masks, they're not hiding their nature. They're advertising their capacity for deception. It's like a snake wearing a sign that says venomous. The warning is the weapon. In the Black Rose masquerade, secrets function as currency. But like any economy, inflation is a constant threat. When everyone is wearing a mask, unmasking becomes meaningless. The true power lies not in keeping secrets, but in choosing which ones to reveal, and to whom. The genius of the masquerade, as a political metaphor, lies in its recursive nature. Behind every mask is another mask, behind every truth another truth, like a political matryoshka doll of deceptions. LeBlanc and Vladimir discussing future schemes aren't just wearing masks. They're wearing the knowledge that everyone knows they're wearing masks. It's the one place where everyone is exactly who they pretend not to be. It's a game where the rules are simple. Everyone knows everyone is lying, and the only foul play is telling the truth without proper ceremony. Isn't it remarkable how putting on a mask can sometimes be the most honest thing a politician can do? At least then we know they're lying. The immortal bastion, Noxus's seat of power, embodies the ultimate irony of fortification. The stronger the walls you build to keep others out, the more thoroughly you imprison yourself. Isn't it curious how Mel Medarda's journey toward it represents both an ascension to power and a willing incarceration? How every bastion is really a monument to anxiety. The thicker the walls, the more they testify to the builder's fears. Noxus, for all its rhetoric of strength, has built its power center like a man who can't sleep without checking the locks thrice. In the bastion's design, we see power's favored direction, up. But height is a double-edged sword. The higher you build your fortress, the farther you remove yourself from the ground truth. Each floor becomes another layer of filtration between reality and ruler. Every bastion is a record of past attacks, each reinforcement a scar turned into strategy. The immortal bastion's walls don't just protect, they remember. Like a paranoid diary written in stone, each buttress and arrow slit tells a story of past vulnerabilities. The very name Immortal Bastion betrays its deepest anxiety. Nothing mortal can build something immortal. The adjective protests too much. It's like naming your dog Invincible. The moment you feel the need to say it, you've admitted your doubt. The supreme irony of the Bastion is that it represents both Noxus's greatest strength and its fundamental weakness. It's a perfect metaphor for power itself. The more you try to secure it, the more you advertise your fear of losing it. Each stone added to the wall is another admission of vulnerability. Perhaps the most telling detail is how Mel approaches this symbol of power, not with awe at its strength, but with an understanding of its necessity. She sees the bastion for what it is, not just a fortress, but a testament to power's perpetual insecurity. Isn't it fascinating how the mightiest structures in history are always monuments to fear rather than strength? Like a psychological assessment written in architecture, every bastion tells us more about what its builders were afraid of than what they could achieve. In the Darius/Trundle confrontation, true ice serves as a perfect political metaphor. It burns those who aren't worthy to wield it. Isn't it delicious that even in the realm of cold, power manages to burn? It's nature's own loyalty test, complete with instant feedback. Something that's transparent, yet distorts everything we see through it. Like political promises, you can see right through it, but what you see isn't quite reality. The Freljordian true ice takes this further. It's transparent, but only the iceborn can truly see its nature. Ice preserves. It holds things unchanged, suspended in time. But preservation is also stasis, and stasis is a kind of death. When Darius's axe becomes encased in ice, it's both a moment of weakness and a monument to that weakness, perfectly preserved for all to see. How very Noxian, to turn even a moment of vulnerability into a display of endurance. The beauty of ice as a power metaphor lies in its democratic cruelty. It doesn't care who touches it. It burns everyone equally. Except, of course, for those special few who are born to handle it. It's aristocracy's favorite myth, wrapped in a natural phenomenon. Ice is incredibly strong under pressure, yet surprisingly brittle to a sharp impact, rather like political power itself. The moment of Darius's weapon being frozen captures this perfectly, all that strength rendered temporarily useless by the right kind of weakness. In this context is that it represents both power's transparency and its opacity, its strength and its vulnerability, its preservation and its potential for shattering, all in one crystalline metaphor. And isn't it just perfectly political that true ice, like true power, doesn't just sit there being cold? It actively punishes those who dare to touch it without proper authority. It's like nature decided to create its own metaphor for hereditary privilege. That golden eye at the beginning of our tale, isn't it delightfully presumptuous? Power always wants to paint its surveillance in gold, as if decorating oppression somehow justifies it. It's like putting a bow tie on a security camera. In Noxus, as in all power structures, the mere possibility of being watched becomes a form of control. The brilliance of the golden eye isn't that it sees everything. It's that it makes everything perform as if it's being seen. The black rose knows this well. Better to be the eye than the object of its attention. Knowledge in Noxus operates like a twisted stock market where seeing is currency. The more you see, the richer in power you become. But like any economy, inflation is a constant threat. When everyone is watching everyone else, the value of observation plummets. That's why the truly powerful must also control what others can see. Every eye that watches must also be watched. It's the first law of political optics. LeBlanc and Vladimir discussing schemes are simultaneously observers and observed, each watching the other watch them. It's surveillance all the way down, like a hall of mirrors in a funhouse designed by paranoid architects. The greatest irony of power's obsession with seeing everything is that it creates its own blind spots. The more you focus on watching others, the less you see of yourself. Noxus's golden eye might see all the shifting patterns on the wall, but can it see its own blink? Isn't it fascinating how power always wants to cast itself as the all-seeing eye, yet remains comically blind to its own limitations? It's like a cyclops trying to wink. Impressive, but missing the point entirely. The supreme joke of surveillance is that those who invest everything in watching others inevitably become the most watched of all. Power's eye, golden though it may be, is less a tool of observation and more a target painted in precious metal. Those shifting wall carvings in the opening scene, what perfect metaphors for power's fluidity. Like political manifestos written in mercury, they refuse to hold their shape. The wall doesn't just display change, it embodies it. Rather like how Noxus itself refuses to be pinned down to a single form of oppression. Consider Cassiopeia's transformation, from privileged noble to serpentine creature. Isn't it deliciously appropriate that in seeking power, she physically becomes what Noxian politics already was, cold-blooded, venomous, and prone to shedding its skin when convenient? Every metamorphosis in Noxus comes with its price tag written in pain. Mel's journey, Swain's transformation, even the Black Rose's shifting allegiances, each change demands its pound of flesh. It's like a cosmic law. Power's butterfly must first digest itself in its own cocoon. The truly exquisite irony of Noxian metamorphosis is that everyone changes to become more authentically what they already were. Like a political Mobius strip, every transformation reveals rather than alters. Swain becomes more Swain-like, the Black Rose more thorny, power more powerful. In Noxus, no metamorphosis is ever complete. It's all intermediate stages, cocoons within cocoons. Even the immortal bastion keeps shifting its meaning like an architectural werewolf caught in endless moonlight. All this change serves to keep everything essentially the same. Power changes its shape precisely, so it doesn't have to change its nature. Like a shapeshifter's ultimate trick, transforming so thoroughly that no one notices you're still exactly what you've always been. How power's greatest transformations often leave its essential nature untouched. Like a snake, shedding its skin only to reveal more scales underneath. The opening scene's ritualistic wall shifting isn't just decoration, it's power's favorite form of theater. Noxus understands that authority needs its liturgy, even tyranny needs its hymnal. Like a church of political violence, every act must be properly consecrated. In the Black Rose Masquerade, we see power's favorite ritual format, the endless cycle. Each ceremony doesn't just happen, it repeats, like a political heartbeat. The masks, the daggers, the dances, all carefully choreographed steps in power's eternal waltz. Every ritual needs its sacrifice, and Noxus's ceremonies write their scripture in red. How every ascension to power requires its own bloody christening. It's like a twisted corporate ladder where every rung must be painted crimson before it can be climbed. How it transforms the arbitrary into the necessary. Through ceremony, Noxus makes its cruelties look inevitable, its choices appear as destiny. It's rather like dressing murder in ceremonial robes and calling it tradition. Each ritual in Noxus carries the weight of prophecy, not because it predicts the future, but because it forces the future to conform to its pattern. The shifting walls don't just show change, they choreograph it. Noxian ritual, it presents itself as ancient tradition while serving thoroughly modern brutality. It's like using antique frames to display fresh wounds. In the end, Noxus emerges as a masterclass in power's favorite literary devices. Through its bite marks, it authors a history written in scar tissue. In its masquerades, it performs identity as a deadly dance. Within its bastion, it architects fear into monument. Through its ice, it crystallizes privilege into natural law. Behind its eyes, it transforms surveillance into scripture. Through metamorphosis, it makes change serve stasis. And in its rituals, it sanctifies violence into ceremony. Each element interweaves with the others in a tapestry of control. The bite marks leave their testimony on the walls of the bastion. The masquerade's masks freeze into ice. The eyes watch the metamorphosis of power. The rituals consecrate each transformation. The bastion preserves each sacred scar. The ice burns those who dare to see. The metamorphosis perpetuates the eternal masquerade. What emerges is not just a political system, but a complete poetics of power, where every wound is a word, every mask a metaphor, every wall a verse in authority's endless epic. Noxus doesn't just practice power. It performs it as a kind of dark art, where every act of violence must also be an act of beauty, where every scar must also be a signature. In this theater of cruelty, we find power's ultimate truth, that it must make its necessities look like choices, its choices look like destiny, and its destiny look like art. For in Noxus, as in all empires, power is not merely exercised. It is choreographed, composed, and performed in an eternal dance of teeth and gold, ice and eyes, masks and metamorphoses, all consecrated by rituals that transform the profane act of domination into a sacred ceremony of becoming. And perhaps that's the most Noxian thing of all, the insistence that power must not merely be effective, but elegant, not merely feared, but admired, not merely obeyed, but believed. For in the end, every empire is also a story it tells about itself, written in whatever ink it has at hand, be it gold, ice, or blood.